right, episode 15. How exciting is this? We've made it 15 weeks, and this is, if you don't know me, this is pretty much as excited as I can get right now. So, in celebration, I thought I'd pick a controversial topic today that I'll probably piss everyone off. There's no way this will not annoy someone, so I'm excited. I'm going to be reviewing my top 10 favorite albums of my lifetime. Now, let me preface the saying of my lifetime by I didn't want to choose anything before the early 2000s because I don't think that's really fair because I wasn't around to experience the music for myself in the moment. Like I love the 90s music. I love 80s. I love classic rock. I love the Beatles. But I didn't really get to specifically like choose that for myself. I didn't really experience in the moment. So as a kid, I was exposed to a lot of different music, but which helped me adapt into the type of music I listen to today. But I wanted to limit it to some extent of music that I was able to choose for myself, if that makes sense. Now, there's no way I'm going to make people happy with the music selections, and I know that everyone has their own preferences, and that's totally fine, but these are my choices, and this is a good little insight to me, I think. I've been thinking a lot about music lately. The first kind of like quarter of the year, I really like cut out almost all music. I felt super guilty listening to like the same old songs over and over again, and I just feel like I wasn't being productive. I was in a state of depression really, where I was thinking to myself, like I need to focus on things like listening to podcasts and audiobooks, and I got so into doing that I cut out all music completely. I thought, listening to music is just not it's not bringing me joy right now, and I'm wasting my time essentially listening to music. But then I really didn't realize the effect music has. And one morning I'm driving to work and I'm like, you know what? Fuck it. I'm just going to listen to some music. And I got in a really good mood, and it put me in a good mood the rest of the day. And lately I've been integrating more music, and I'm not putting so much pressure on myself. And that got me thinking about my favorite artists, my favorite albums, and music just that really makes me feel good or happy or brings back strong moments of nostalgia, let's say. And I think that's a big part of our music preferences is it comes down to what experiences in my life or what stories can I tie this specific music or artist or song back to, and that's special. So here we go. I'm going to start with number 10 and work my way down to number 1. You ready? Okay. Number 10 is Pure Heroine by Lorde. This album came out in September of 2013, and it just fucking slaps, man. It's a banger. This girl was 16 years old at the time when she dropped this album, and all of America was completely obsessed with this little big-haired weirdo from New Zealand, myself included. And I feel like Lorde really walked so that these little teenage girls like Olivia Rodrigo and Billie Eilish could run. Like this girl just opened up a whole new world with great songs like Ribs and Tennis Court, and Royals was a huge single at the time. It got overplayed, but White Teeth Teens as well. Team was another great one, but just another just a great vibe. And she was just weird too. She would do these kind of crazy, just like weird movements and dances, which was like just super unique at the time. And she was just a total outcast. And at the time, this was my freshman year of college. And I vividly remember like walking through college campus, just like to class or something through the quad, just absolutely bumping this album. But this was also kind of like my first real time, or my first real experience like in the outside world on my own. And I think it just brings me back to a time when I was just in a state of just trying to figure some shit out and have a good time. And yeah, it was a really cool album. I think it was a great like debut album for her. But yeah, made the top 10. Very unique, I think. I think that's a unique selection in the top 10 for most people, but it's a great album overall. All right, number 9. This one's might seem weird coming from me, but it's the Carter 3 by Lil Wayne. Lil Wayne, sorry, not Little Wayne. But the Carter 3 released in June of 2008, which means I would have been like 13 years old at the time. And that's when I was really just learning how to play volleyball. I was going to California every other weekend with my club team in high school. And I was, like I said, I was 13 and I was one of the youngest players on the team, probably like 100 pounds, soaking wet, painfully white and awkward. And just some of the guys that were around me were just like light years ahead of me when it came to coordination, puberty, all around just coolness. There were like 9 of us all packed into a van for like 4 to 5 hours straight, and we just nonstop play rap music. And this was literally like every other weekend, which was fairly new to me at the time. This was like my first time like really going out on my own. But I remember hearing songs like Lollipop or A Milli and Got Money, and being like, whoa, this shit is like just a whole new level of just what the fuck. I mean, like lines like Sicilian bitch with long hair with coke in her derriere is like, I was like, this is awesome. I mean, this is what I've been waiting for my whole life, and this is independence, right? So yeah, it was a crazy kind of like real introduction to rap, and not too long after, I'd be wearing a YMCMB hoodie to school, which is short for Young Money, Cash Money Billionaires, which was his recording label at the time. So yeah, so just a overall really good album, great introduction to rap for me. Have some really strong memories to some of these songs. So yeah, it really stuck out to me. I think it's just a solid overall, like a timeless rap album as well, like true rap album. And yeah, definitely deserves a spot in my top 10. Okay, let's move over to number 8. We're going to switch things up a little bit. This one is Meteora by Linkin Park. Now, growing up, I was kind of split into 2 groups when it came to music. My parents are divorced, divorced fairly young. So one side, let's say like my father's side, for example, he listened to pretty much only classic rock. So the Beatles, The Who, the Rolling Stones, AC/DC, huge classic rock bands, right? Bruce Springsteen. And the other side, my mother's side, she was super into like 90s to like early 2000s rock. So I got like Counting Crows, Avril Lavigne, and then Linkin Park. And I remember I have this vivid memory of having this DVD in my house, and it was Linkin Park live in Texas. And I just saw this group of guys just fucking losing it on stage, screaming at the top of their lungs, and it was just like incredible to see like whole just massive crowds of people in an outdoor arena just like sing with you is crazy to see, and especially at such a young age, I was like, wow, this is awesome. But there was also like such a challenge in understanding what Mike Shinoda was like saying. He was the rapper in the group, and he was rapping over alternative rock, which was extremely crazy as well. So I had to pay like really close attention, and eventually like I started learning all the lyrics. And now this album launched in 2003, which means I was roughly around the ages of like 8 or 9, singing every word to like these what are pretty like dark songs like Numb, Faint, Somewhere I Belong, Breaking the Habit, which was fucking a great song. But like this is pretty badass for an 8 to 9-year-old singing all these songs. And at the time, my stepfather was introduced us to different music as well. He was a lot more musically talented than the rest of my family is. So he'd like play guitar. I had a drum set. My sister grew up playing piano. So we'd like riff these songs, and it was super fun, but good memory. But yeah, Linkin Park was an absolute banger. I remember seeing them as a teenager live, and it was great. I mean, they sound just amazing. Like they were everything I wanted them to be. So yeah, great memories with Linkin Park. Definitely a good introduction to like alternative rock for me, that eventually got me into some other great bands of like the 90s. But yeah, really, really great, solid album that has stuck with me and was a huge part of my childhood. Excuse me. I'm going to take a sip of my coffee here. Number 7, we're going to go a little bit more recent here, and that is Damn by Kendrick Lamar. Damn came out my senior year of college, peak when I wanted to just have fun, party Julian. It was April 17th, 2017, just four days before I was trekking 10 hours across the desert to experience my first Coachella Music Festival, and he was headlining one of the nights. So I don't think I've listened to an album more back to back in my entire life than this album. It just set the trip up for such a good time, so much fun, because it was so new and it was so like the hot thing at the moment, and all of a sudden you realize like you're experiencing something that really everyone in America your age just wants to experience. And all of a sudden this little guy Kung Fu Kenny comes out, and he's just like performing songs like Humble and Loyalty and DNA, and he just didn't disappoint at all, and it was just fucking awesome, man. And that album just brings me back to a time in my life when I was most likely, I guess, to just say fuck it, like let's do it, which was really fun while it lasted. But yeah, this was just like a party. This was a party album for me, and this was super fun. And to this day, like you can still listen to. I mean, it's only like a couple of years later, but like these songs just still are just great and will get any party going. But yeah, really great time in my life. This is if I want to listen to something where I want to get in that like fuck it mentality. Like I'm playing Humble. That's what I'm doing. Number 6 is Man on the Moon, The End of the Day, Kid Cudi. Now, nothing is more impactful than hearing the sounds of Kid Cudi hum on his debut studio album. Like this was just Kid Cudi humming is an angel, right? And I don't think there's not a better soundtrack to smoke weed to, in my opinion. Like this is just a killer album. To this day, like if I'm smoking weed, like I'm gonna throw this album on if I want to listen to music. And this came out in 2009, so I was like a freshman in high school. I was never like a bad kid, right? I didn't touch weed until I was 18 for the first time. But this album was kind of my first interaction with understanding what weed was. I didn't smoke for 4 years later, but I remember looking at this guy and thinking like, damn, this is a cool motherfucker, man. Like Kid Cudi is badass. He was different. He was the lonely stoner. He was the shit. And I think at one point I had like 3 or 4 just like different favorite songs from this album. Like let's go through this album a little bit. There's Pursuit of Happiness, which was amazing, and then later comes out with a Stevie Aoki remix when I was 16, 17, I would assume, which it was even like better, right? Like a huge party song. Make Her Say was an amazing song, and to this day probably goes in a strong list of one of my favorite songs of all time. Soundtrack to My Life, great song. Like these were just amazing, amazing songs, and there's just no other feeling like driving around at night and just wailing out the amazing humming to Solo Dolo. Like there's just no better feeling. And Kid Cudi's he was the shit, man. This was a great debut album, I think. Probably one of the strongest out of any artists. There's probably like at least 6 independent songs where you like, and you can go up to any person my age and be like, oh yeah, like that's a great song. And that like just makes for a great album. Like they were just also eclectic and different, and you had like even Day and Night was just great, man. Like that, those were just great independent songs. And so yeah, great album overall. Loved it. If you're ever smoking weed, like this is the album to just bump, man. All right, here we go. Number 5, Channel Orange, Frank Ocean. Now, a lot of people like Blonde better, but I don't know. For some reason, I'm just a sucker for like earlier albums with artists. They just resonate with me a lot more. I don't know if it's because like I don't know. I don't know if it feels because they're just more raw or but like sometimes I think money and fame can really change a person's music. Now, I'm not saying this happened with Frank Ocean. Blonde is amazing in its own right, but there's been just a lot of artists who I think like earlier stuff is just a lot more pure. It's like the music that they really wanted to put out. Like Linkin Park is a good example in my opinion. They stopped getting angry, and like I could think you could just sense that in the evolution of their albums. Like they're not as pent up with anger and depression as they used to be, which makes a lot of albums and songs good. The Weeknd is another great example. His earlier stuff is super dark and crazy, and now he's so mainstream that like you're just not going to hear that similar stuff. Drake is another good example. He's evolved a lot. But yeah, so now Channel Orange came out in the summer of 2012, and I would have been 17, so freshly new license, driving around a lot, senior year of high school, just hanging out with friends. I think this album was just so different than everything else that came out in that time. There was like a heavy emphasis on rap, and then there was Frank Ocean, and he was just like this one dude singing over some great music, and it had a lot of range. There were just some amazing slower songs with just some really emotional lyrics, like Thinking About You, Bad Religion, and then Pink Matters, just an amazing song as well. But then there was like some really good like upbeat party songs, like Pyramids, Super Rich Kids I think is a great song. Lost just recently kind of resurfaced mainstream wise because there's like a TikTok dance to it. But overall, like this was just an awesome album, and you could listen to it all the way through, and even to this day, like these songs were killer, man. Like this Frank, like I would love to see Frank Ocean. Anyone would love to see Frank Ocean to this day, especially because he's put out such minimal music even since then. Like this will forever be an all-time amazing album. I don't care who you are, like you could not love this album. We're getting close to it. All right, number 4 is Acid Rap, Chance the Rapper. Now, again, 2013. This was a very, I guess, formative time for me for music, apparently. Now, I know technically this is a mixtape, not an album. Fuck off if you're one of those people who are like that. Like seriously, like I don't know why do you have to do this? Like I hate when people try to correct me to make it seem like you know music more than me or something. Like I have a lot of like band t-shirts, and for me it's like it's a fear of like wearing a Nirvana t-shirt, let's say for example, and someone being like, can you name all the members of Nirvana, or can you name 6 Nirvana songs? And I've like, this has happened to me before where I've worn a Beatles shirt, and one of my parents' friends is like, can you name like 10 Beatles songs? And I'm like, yeah, I can, but like, why do you have to put someone on the spot like that? I don't get it. I like it just, what kind of fucking asshole are you to have to do that? But I digress. So technically, yes, this is not an album. This is a mixtape, but still, I'm throwing it in here because it doesn't fucking matter. But yeah, so Acid Rap is just 14 songs of pure gold. It's music that's really fun, and you can't just not sing along. Like if Cocoa Butter Kisses comes on, like you're singing along, you know? There's been countless drives to Reno in my college days, which is a 7-hour drive to and from Las Vegas. And every single time you'd have to play acid rap all the way through. Even if it was like a 2 to 3 day trip, you would listen to it all the way through on the way there, and again all the way through on the way back. And while you're eating fresh jerky from your friend's father who freshly prepared it for the drive. And these were just extremely good times. And this album, just like, it was mixtape, I guess. This album was just incredible, man. Like, how could you not like Chance the Rapper? He was just filled with so much joy and happiness, and his rapping style and voice was just so different, and it was just great. It was amazing album to this day, one of the best. There are just some amazing samples from like not well known artists either, so like it like makes you want to listen to these people more, and just, I don't know, it's just great. So yeah, Acid Rap's an amazing album. Now, before I get into the final three of my top 10 favorite albums of my lifetime, I wanted to talk about some of the albums that nearly missed the cut, to show you that I really did put a lot of time and effort thinking about this list. I don't just do this podcast for the shits and gigs, man. I want to think and reflect, and I put a lot of time in talking about these topics. But yeah, some of the albums that just missed the cut, okay? So right on the outside cusp of the top 10. Forest Hills Drive, J. Cole, amazing album, no features, really got me into J. Cole. Funny story about this album is my buddy Eric and I, we were invited to go see this concert. Someone had 2 free extra tickets. He was a J. Cole fan. I didn't know who J. Cole really was. So we go to a pregame. We get pretty drunk. I get way too drunk. We get to the concert. It's like nosebleed section. I feel completely horrible. I'm like, oh my God, I overdid it. I spent the entire concert in the bathroom stall throwing up. And I remember, I mean, I could still hear the concert, and I remember hearing him say early beginning, mid throw up, he's like, you know what? Like, Vegas is fucking awesome. I'm gonna play my whole album all the way through for you guys. And I just remember sitting there like on the ground of the fucking bathroom being like, oh my fucking God, like this would happen to me. This fucking sucks right now. But that still did not deter me from not liking this album. This is a great album overall to this day. Amazing songs on it. Another one, kind of a change up here for Emma Bonavere. Rainy Day, you throw this album on, wow, you're in the feels, man. This is great. Take Care, Drake, obviously huge banger of my generation. This was just an amazing album overall. Big Drake fan. He's evolved a lot, like I said, over my lifetime, but yeah, I think one of his all-time greats. Next one kind of may sound weird coming from me. Sour by Olivia Rodrigo is, holy shit, man. Like, this is a great album. I don't know if, I'm sure most people haven't, like, especially guys, haven't given this album like the time of day, but there are just like some hit after hit after hit after hit on this album. Like, there's just some great songs where you're like, wow, like I really wanted to see her when she came to Las Vegas, but I didn't end up buying the tickets. I think they were like $700 for 2 tickets, and I just didn't want to do it, which I regret. Is because I don't think there's just no way she could ever put out a better album than this one. It was just it's a great debut album. Most people just like heard Driver's License, which was overplayed, and that was it. But yeah, some overall, like, there are probably 5 or 6 songs on there that are just like great. Another recent one, Harry's House by Harry Styles, won a shit ton of awards, and rightfully so. This was one of the best albums of the last 5 years, in my opinion. Just great overall. The Fame, Lady Gaga. This was huge album for its time. Lady Gaga just took over the music scene out of nowhere. But yeah, just think about how many singles are on The Fame. Go listen to it. It's great. Other last 2 that missed the cut, Life of Pablo, Kanye West, and My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy by Kanye West. Just great albums in their own sense, very artistically different from each other. A lot of people think My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy is his #1 album. I disagree, but still amazing albums. And then My Life of Pablo is just like, for the time in my life where it came out, it was just amazing. That was the first and only time I ever saw Kanye on tour, was for that album, and it was one of the best concerts I've ever seen in my life. Probably, maybe the best concert I've ever seen in my life, and it was incredible. Great album overall. All right, let's get back to the top 10. Number 3, Best Day Ever, Mac Miller. This is also a mixtape, and I want to fucking hear it, all right? But this was released in 2011, and this was crazy, man. Easy Mac with the cheesy raps. This dude did it all. And this guy at the time was the epitome of the guy for me. He was just a cool ass, normal white dude, relatively close to my age, who just made incredibly just dope shit and got drunk and partied and smoked weed and got with a lot of women. And like, this is, as a 16-year-old, like, this is what you wanted. He was the closest idea, I'd say, to success for me. And he was like 18 years old. Now I was 16 years old at the time, but extremely big formative year for me. Got a car, got in my first real like relationship, traveling pretty much unsupervised to California every other weekend with a bunch of white dudes, going to volleyball trips, like I said. But yeah, this was just a very good time. And like listening to lyrics like in Donald Trump, when he's like, take over the world when I'm on my Donald Trump shit. Like, as a 16-year-old kid, you're like, fuck yeah. Like, I want to take over the world. I feel invincible. I'm going to fucking fuck shit up. And I really didn't, in retrospect. Like, I was a very good kid. But like, this was like, he was just fucking cool, man. And he was like the white guy's Jesus. He was just like the fucking shit. And he was who you could relate to. A lot of rappers, I just couldn't relate to what they were saying at the time. Like, I didn't go through adversity. I couldn't relate to some of the lyrics, right? I couldn't. And with what he was saying, and he was just all about having fun and having a good time, and yeah, like, that's what I related to. But yeah, I'm very, very grateful for this album. I think it's a great high school teenager album, and it just brings me immense joy listening to it. I just listened to it again recently, driving back to Las Vegas from California all the way through, and there are just some great songs on here, and it just brings me back to good times. Mac Miller is another person who I think their music really evolved a lot over time. Listening to Movies with the Sound Off is another great album, I think. That came out when I was 18, and in Europe, it was just like he's just evolved so much, I think, and I'm sure if he was still alive today, he would still be putting out amazing music that continues to evolve. I don't want to sound like a huge Mac Miller fan. Definitely kind of dropped off for me when I entered college and I started listening to other music and stuff. But yeah, I went back recently in the past like year, listened to all of his albums again, and yeah, just great artist overall. He will be missed for sure, but yeah, Best Day Ever is just, I think, a truly great compilation of music that just brings me joy and brings me happiness, man. All right, number 2, we're getting there. We're almost there. Hang in there with me. Number 2 is Kissland by The Weeknd. This will forever be the best Weeknd album for me, and it is strictly because of the experiences I've had listening to this album. Now, specifically, I remember the first time listening to this album and getting it. My buddy Eric was a huge Weeknd fan. I didn't really know who he was at the time. It was 2013. The dude was just... he wasn't as mainstream as he is now. So he was so pumped and so excited to get this album. So he convinced me somehow to find a ride with him to the Meadowood Mall in Reno. This is like a 15, 20-minute ride off campus. And as a freshman living in the dorms with no car and no such thing as like Uber at the time, like, this was not an easy task to do. So to go through all of this effort just to get some music, like, it was a big deal. So yeah, we get the CD, we listen to it. It's just amazing. And his experiences and vocals and music, it was just an incredibly great album. This was like one of the first albums I think I've ever listened to where all of the songs kind of like blend together, which is super cool. Like the ending of one song fades perfectly into the beginning of another song on the album. Extremely cool. And this was also within a very similar period of me like trying to like figure shit out, and the whole album's about like him leaving Toronto and traveling the world for the first time, getting on a plane, and like so it was just a very it was something I could relate to, where he was going out and experiencing the world on his own, and I mean it's half of it's about sex, which is like couldn't really relate to that part at the time, but um, amazing album. And this was also in the time period where it was me trying my first edible. So here's the story. My roommate meets this guy who makes his own edible muffins. Now my roommate asks if we want some. Naturally, my buddy Eric and I are like, yeah, like, of course. So we meet this guy on campus at a picnic table on like a Tuesday night at like 9:30 at night. No one else is around. This white dude with dreadlocks comes walking up to us, comes around the corner with a backpack. He's like young, but he's clearly older than us. He's to my knowledge, I think he's a student. But after a brief conversation, he pulls out some tinfoil wrapped muffins, and we give him some money. It was probably like, I don't know, like $30. I don't know. And then my roommate, me, and my buddy Eric, the three of us go back to our dorm, split a muffin, lay down, throw on some headphones, and just start listening to music for what ended up being like hours. And when I say I was just like fucking couch locked, like this was some of the most intense high that I've ever experienced in my life. And I have no idea like how much weed was even in this muffin. Like this was before rec was around, dispensaries were around. So like we just took it, we just had it. I couldn't move a fucking muscle, and thank God Kissland was playing, because I felt like my ears were just being caressed by a fucking angel, man. Like, and this album was just fucking insane to me at that time. And the greatest thing about the album is not like, I mean, yeah, his singing's great, but there's some crazy sounds. Like there's like pouring rain, there's like jaguars, there's just some crazy shit. And when you're fucking blazed out of your mind and like can't move, and like you're just fucking sitting there like on a whole completely different level, like this shit just fucking slapped. It was crazy. And so for that reason, it will forever be my favorite Weeknd album. Most of the songs are just about him like trying to find his way through the world, like I said. So kind of resonated with me at the time because I was on my own for the first time. But yeah, just amazing album. A lot of people, I don't think have really even like listened to Kissland or given it a chance. It was pretty, like I said, it was a low key album at the time. So definitely recommend listening to it. Extremely different from like the Weeknd you would hear today. But yeah, great album. Finally, we've made it to number one. Are you ready? So Graduation by Kanye West is my number one favorite album. Releasing on September 11th, 2007. This was the first time I truly heard a masterpiece. And I don't feel like I've have to really ever explain myself when I say like this is one of the greatest albums of all time. Like I said, a lot of people will say like their favorite Kanye album or their favorite album is My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy, which I can totally relate to. It's a work of art in its own right. Like there's no denying that this is a truly amazing album. But I don't think I was in the right age when it was released, or in the right like time period. So it just doesn't hold as much value as Graduation does for me. This came out most likely when I was like a freshman in high school, and this was really my first real introduction to rap music. And boy, like was it a good one to start listening to. Like I'm just going to list off a few songs here for you, and you'll understand like the magnitude of the songs on this album that hold unbelievably strong to this day, right? Okay, so Stronger, which, yes, was overplayed, but you cannot deny that this was an amazing song. Flashing Lights, one of the greatest songs of all time. Good Morning, incredible rap song. And then My personal favorite song on the album is Homecoming. Just great song to sing along to. You can't not like these songs. These were pivotal songs of my generation, and it was just growing up and listening to this and being exposed to this as a freshman in high school, when you're just going through so many different things and you're just like starting to figure out who you're becoming, and like this was just opened my eyes to a completely new genre of music, and I'm so grateful for it. So those are my top 10. Recently, I started watching Dave, which is a great show. And honestly, it really got me back into rap music as well. I have no idea what's really been going on in the rap realm for the last like 4 years, I would say. Starting to get back into it, which has been really fun. But a big thing I've noticed that like rappers do now is like they'll completely change up a beat midway through the song. Like Drake or Travis Scott do this a lot. I'm really not a big fan of that. Like, why didn't you just make two separate tracks? Like, I think Travis Scott had like 19 songs on his newest album. You're telling me you couldn't just make a 20th song out of the two different beats? But I don't know. So it just kind of throws me off. But anyways, yeah. So getting back into rap is definitely fun. I don't know if it's kind of weird as like a 28-year-old white guy to still be listening to rap. I hope it's not. I hope we're kind of past that. So some of you may think this is the worst top 10 list of all time. I don't care. These albums really hold a lot of value for me. They've gotten me through some hard times, some really good times as well. So they just have played a huge, major part in my life, and I'm so grateful for them. Yeah, thank you for listening. I hope you go back and listen to these albums yourself and hear the amazing music that comes from them. If anyone ever does listen to this podcast, I'd love to hear some of your favorite albums or mixtapes or some new rap music that I should listen to, since I'm starting to get back into it. But anywho, that's all I have for today. Things have been going well. Just trying to hang in there, just going through the motions. Summer is coming to a close, which is nice. I'm ready for the second half of the year to continue. And in the meantime, I'll be listening to some new music and enjoying some of this old music as well. So hope you do too. Have a great day. Thank you. And that's it.